Evening, you all. Welcome to another Lockdown Live chat. As usual, joined with my awesome co-host, the purveyor of all things Dracona Media, Mr. Alec Larson. How's it going?
Oh, it's all good, man. Crazy busy with work, but I'm grateful that during this, this shit storm of a time that this whole country and basically the whole world has experienced, that I'm lucky enough to have work. There's a lot of people that aren't as hashtag blessed. So being busy is what it is, huh?
Yeah. What a positive note to start this almost, early March, the first chat of the month. Well, we actually got a positive note. We joined with a familiar face. Not only to the chat, but, to the local metal community, a familiar face. We joined with Mr. Metal for Africa, but more importantly, guitarist of Mind Assault, who have just released their newest album, A Long Wait. The Cult of Conflict is finally out. Welcome, Pat.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah, and thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming, and we finally got there.
It's actually so crazy that we're speaking to you almost 9 months after what was leading into being the first Metal for Africa online event, the Winterfest.
Yeah.
Since then, you spoke brief words of a promise that the album will see the light of day in early 2021. And yeah, so some good news. It's finally out. So a lot of positive things in a weird type of world we're living in. How has life been for you? How have things been for Patrick?
Oh man, you shouldn't be asking that question. In a nutshell, bloody awful. But you know what? We're still here. We're still alive. We're still kicking. But I think in spite of the roller coaster, let's call it emotional and psychological roller coaster, which it's obviously been for most people, if not absolutely everybody to varying degrees, I have been privileged enough to be able to use a lot of the time to learn a lot of skills. Like I've always been a sort of a jack of all trades. Now I'm a jack of even more trades. Still a master at none, really. But for all the turbulent times of the last year, I do have a lot to be grateful for.
Sick. Yeah, no, that's good. It's always good to find like that silver lining and whatnot. As you've mentioned, the album is finally done. How does it feel to have this like achievement now of releasing it? And also, maybe you can give some context to people that maybe are watching from overseas or don't know a little bit of the history of the band. How long has this album been in progress? And
yeah, well, look, it has, in all truth, taken way longer than it should have. But the first half of our life as a band in this country, or just in general, was we put such a strong emphasis on live performance and being strong entertainers. And that involved getting quite a strong circuit momentum, playing a lot of shows very frequently up and down the country, more than average for extreme music bands, pre-2010. And there was a momentum to that. And, we were all still working people. Whereas, once we reached that stage of our lives, the 30s plus, a lot of life priorities start to take a bit of a shift. People start to have families. People have to start taking their careers a bit more seriously and so on. So band life in general started to come to a bit of a crawl. But I think the more significant reason why the album itself took this long, I mean, most of the material on it was written the better part of a decade ago already. But our lead guitarist, he moved back to his home country of Namibia at the end of 2012. And that put us in a bit of a situation of uncertainty, where we eventually actually got a session guitarist, because he was still part of the band, but we got a session guitarist so we could continue our live run, which was always good to us. So why stop? And I think when it came to the point that Francois, our original lead guitarist, decided that, coming and playing shows with us in South Africa was becoming very costly, not just in travel and stuff like that, but the time away from his family and his work. He would have to put in leave to spend with the band, and then when the family holidays come around, he's working. Not very balanced lifestyle. So yeah, he decided to leave the band, and it was actually only then when we felt we could seriously start engaging the recording process. But for us, it was important to keep his content, all the songs that he had been a part of creating, in the mix. Anyways, life as it is with its twists and turns, another 5 years passed, and finally truth is this album should have been out this time last year already, but we saw COVID coming. We had to put on ice all those plans. And I think we also, at the time the reality of COVID first dawned, we didn't expect necessarily that it would take as long for the storm to blow over as what it has now done. So we're like, let's wait a few months and then do our, because we wanted to tour this thing, man. Who wouldn't want to? But as the months just rolled on, we realized, well, we want to let it out. We have to launch it. Whatever that means in this new world, we have to get it done.
And it worked out quite nicely, because you had a little bit of a warm-up presentation, if you will, at the Summer Fest, and even this past Sunday, you were able to do an entire playthrough with some form of visual graphics to go with it. It like the entire album now almost has a visual portrayal to it, which is
yes.
which is kind of nice. It's always good to put a picture to the sound. So now there's kind of a bit of a visual to the soundtrack, if you will.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those visuals are quite like bare bone basics, but we felt it was important that if we're doing a video presentation of any sort, we needed to have some aspect of movement. But it was quite nice to like I was saying, a lot of skills learning over this time period. So to be able to do these things, which in the past we would have always had depended on someone else to do for us, whether we paid them or not is besides the point. We didn't know how to do these things ourselves. So now we've learned those skills, because let's face it, to pay people in these times is tough. Money is tight. I think having started this process with creating a visualization to an entire album, I think we feel now that, but we're not finished yet. We've done a few music videos and the rest were just visualizations, but now we kind of feel almost compelled to take that process further and indeed deliver what you've described, but in a higher quality sense of the thing.
Interesting. Yeah, because there actually has been talk of like instrumental sides to the album, which is a great thing. And we'll probably I was watching the Twitch stream, so
okay.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. I think kind of the core thing that you've kind of mentioned, a lot of the guests that we've had tend to be studio bands or studio artists that tend to gig by default, whereas you guys are the antithesis of a gigging band that pretty much became a studio band. Now, in the process of doing that, you guys kind of, I don't want to say you elevated yourself on all levels sonically, but you definitely, listening to this album and seeing earlier, even on the cusp of 2008 type performances from you guys, the sound is a lot more bombastic and dramatic and orchestral, dare I say. I mean, it's hard to even pigeonhole you guys into a genre. Best I would say is orchestral melodic thrash, perhaps, but there's a bit deaf elements. Who made that conscious? Was that a conscious decision on the band's part when going into the studio, or did it just happen organically?
Yeah, well, the thing is, sorry, the sun's going down where I am and it shines through. So I'm just going to adjust the lighting here. But the thing is, when we started this band, sorry, that didn't really help. When we started this band, we were kind of like a small town band. So the guys who made up the foundation of the band, most of whom are still in the band today, and we're going back, I think, about 18 years. We didn't necessarily like each other. It's not that we didn't like each other, we didn't have beef, but it's like, like cultural differences and stuff, and also music choice differences. Like, we were still all at a young age where we took our music very seriously, maybe too seriously. I was into the darker, doomier, slower, more dramatic stuff. And Donovan, our bassist, he's into the flippin', Primus and Mr. Bungle and all this like wacko, like all over the show stuff. And our vocalist, like brutal death metal, technical brutal death metal. And Francois, the guitarist at that time, he was into like power metal and all that stuff. So it's like we were a very unlikely match to play in a band together. But because of the small town vibes, we were like, well, if we want to be in a band of any sort, we're going to have to find a kind of common ground and build from there. So I think with that foundation, it's like we started out sounding probably more like who the strongest writers or writer at that time was or were. And as the years wore on, more of us could establish our creative fingerprints over the final product. So yeah, I also don't really know where to categorize us because we have such diverse influences. And we actually had a good laugh one Spangius Naviek, where we go off to, camp or whatever, and we just get drunk, like just building team and having fun. We actually had a debate, like, is there any one band that all five of us equally agree is cool? And we came up with only two answers at that time, which was a band called Mors Principium Est and A Monomath. There's no other band anyone could think of that everyone in our band equally agreed was awesome. We're talking about the world's best, but there's always someone who's like, blah, 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 load of cock.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And to think, like, after all of the headbutting, all the trials and tribulations, all of the slight rearrangements, bringing in like new members like Ryan, it's kind of led to this album, Cult of Conflict. And the album, I guess you guys have mentioned all the champions, the unspoken heroes. Andres doing the orchestration, Ryan doing a lot of the technical layout. Jacques was helped by Mr. Craig V, the real legend of local metal. And the one guy that we haven't actually spoken about is Heinrich Kollner, Burning Tone Studios, a mastermind when it comes to mixing and mastering, but also similar to you, Pat, very proud and very sticks to what he wants. So how was the process working with Heinrich?
Yeah. No, it was actually fantastic, hey? In truth, he wasn't the first guy we thought to approach at all, even, which was weird because we've known him for years and we've been friends and stuff. But I think we hadn't at that time heard enough of his work to believe he would be a logical choice for the kind of music we were making at that time. So we actually worked with a few guys on the road to this album, and we worked with one guy. I forget his surname, damn it. But anyways, his name's Rowan, and he's actually a South African expat, but he's based in the UK, and he works on some pretty high-profile stuff, of which includes, which for us was a big draw card, the Machine Head Blackened album. So we did some work with him, and he mixed and mastered about a quarter of our album. And we actually withdrew from that deal, not because we were unhappy with his work, but we were realizing that the amount of back and forth we required there was no ways we could actually afford to complete the project with him. So we had to start saying, yes, but how are we going to do this in a way that's actually affordable? So we had to look back to local shores. And at that time, we started to see, but Heinrich's actually got much more in his stable than we've realized before. So we approached him and we had a very intense conversation about what we wanted out of it. And it turns out that his passion, something he really wanted to do, was exactly this kind of project, but he hadn't had the opportunity yet. so what are the odds of that? Him citing what some of his primary inspirations are, and when we send him certain bands of reference material, how like he was so enthralled by what we were targeting. So yeah, we feel really happy with the result. And I think even though we spent a considerable amount of money with this other guy where we didn't finish that project, like there's no hard feelings. It's like we learned a lot out of that process. And part of what we learned is you don't always need to look for the big and grand names abroad when you might have someone right here who's, because for us, it's not so much about the experience and the technique. It's more about having the passion, because that's why we're in this. And, maybe we could have gotten a better result in the long run out of the other guy, but we'll never know that. So why lose sleep over it? We're very happy with what we got here.
Who knows? 10 years from now, maybe we'll get Peter Tangrian to remaster the album. Who knows? We'll do it. We'll do a 10-year reprint.
Would we need to though? That's the interesting question.
I don't think so. And we got to say.
Yeah.
And we got to say thanks to Heinrich.
What a champ.
Oh, Alec, you know.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were I thought you had something still to add there. Seemed like you cut out.
No, that was it. Salute to
But
Heinrich.
I can add praise. Like I can add praise if you want me to. But no. Like I think he knows by now that like he really made this for us. So lots of hugs and kisses.
What's really cool to hear, and it's sort of a question, more of a comment, is that it seems like you guys have had a lot of people involved in the process of making this album. And I mean, we talk to a lot of bands where it's one guy in the studio like Sean from Dead Man Risen, or there's like a single driving force, right, in the band, like one member that is like, we need to make this album, we need to make stuff happen. And it kind of seems, and it seems like that's not necessarily the case in your band, that it seems that everyone has really come to the party. Is that something you guys consciously decided at the start of this album or at the start of the band, or has it just been like you guys have been such a well-oiled machine for so long that it's just come naturally?
Well, I think I was saying early on about how we were such diverse people in terms of our musical choices starting the band. What we also realized at the early stages, we're quite a diverse group of people in terms of our skill sets outside of the musical context. So we learned from an early time to try and exploit that aspect. Don't ask the guy who can't organize a piss up in a brewery to go and do like flyer drops before a show kind of thing, and don't ask the non-designer to make a t-shirt or send files to printers and stuff like that, So we had enough diversity in our camp to have quite a diverse skill set, which really got us quick off the starting block in our early years. But what we have noticed, which also contributes to why it took this long, is as the world has changed and technology evolved, well, suddenly we found, but we don't have as necessarily diverse skill sets as what we actually need anymore. So we've had to learn. But the nice thing there is that, again, having members in the band who are willing to develop their skills in these essential areas has been a great help. So I think we've learned from the earliest of days to think and behave as best as possible like a team. And I mean, it's not like everyone can give full steam all the time. So I'd say there's almost like seasons. You know, like people, you know, we've been together long enough that we know that people go through stuff in life. We know that times are not always going to be easy. So I think a big part of our success formula in staying together is by having compassion and patience when such seasons emerge. So, you know, some people might criticize us for that because it says that we're not that serious about being like a career band or something. But we're not interested in being a career band. We're told now anyways, you know, but we still love being metalheads and expressing that, you know. So we will learn what needs to be learned to take the next step, whatever that might be. And in this case, it was a lot to do with the studio stuff. You know, we mentioned earlier how we had so much focus on being a live band. So to do a decent, you know, because we've done albums before, but, you know, if we listen to them now, it's just, I'm not sure we feel very proud of them. You know, it's not that the songwriting and stuff wasn't cool, but the production quality, we listen back to that material and say, what were we doing? But we didn't know what we were doing. That's the point. So I don't know if that's answered the question.
100% knocks it out the park. Lyle did almost steal a question of mine earlier around the whole instrumental version of Cult of Conflict, right? It seems like a really great idea, and bands like Vulvodynia and Infant Annihilator and a whole bunch of bands, Other Realm, have done this in the past. I think it's cool because it adds a whole new realm, a whole new element of inclusion, because like I show some of my non-metalhead friends my music and they're like, if you got rid of the vocals, I'd love it. So do you think, well, no, it's the scary sort of vocal.
Granted, yeah. I mean, that's not our reason.
No, I know. Do you think though that do you think that screaming vocals is still like a dividing line even now? Do you think the world is getting to a point where it's more accepting, or do we even have to care?
No, I'd say fuck them. Like, why care? You know, like, no, people are never gonna like something that just disagrees with their ear. So we shouldn't even be trying to force them that, you know. And like we're at peace with that. And I'm finding that in my older years, I'm really appreciating a lot of music that's very vocal orientated. So we're actually talking outside of metal music now as well. I'd say even especially. But what I love more is when those elements and metal combine. You know, but that's almost a different conversation. Well, is it actually? No, I don't know. But in terms of growling vocals being more acceptable, it's like, nah, you know, if they became more acceptable, I think perhaps they would even lose their power. So yeah, do we want that? Nah.
Yes, not.
But well, I guess that being said, like Alex said, a couple of the bands, usually Tech Death or kind of the orchestral type bands, tend to do an instrumental type release. And I kind of presume that you guys wanted to really showcase that true epicness of the soundscape sounds that Andres brought in. And no disrespect to Jacques, because he's a beast on folks, but I imagine that was your guys' route, your idea.
Ultimately, it's all about Andres. I mean, he joined the band as early as 2007 already. But in those days, we knew that he had an interest in playing keyboards. But that's, to us, that seemed like all that it was at that time. So when he joined the band, we were actually going into studio to record our first full-length album. So we kind of invited him and said, you know, why don't you, you know, mess around with the keyboards a little bit here and there. So we did that. We actually had a literal keyboard brought into the studio, and he played some of the stuff that he had sort of composed that he thought would fit. And while we were doing that, I think our vision at that time was more just to be accommodating and welcoming to this new member rather than that we had any musical idea of where to go. Personally, I loved it because I've always enjoyed bands that brought that extra element in, but not all of the band members were on the same page with that. But as we saw him grow in his skill and we started to realize what talent he actually is, like, fuck, man, we needed to give him more room. And like, I have no regrets. It's like, just his understanding of creating moods and atmospheres. It's like, I'm such a big fan, like I don't want to be the guy who comes to preach our band this and our, I'm going to say Andres, that guy, that individual deserves to shine. And if by stripping the vocals out, because the other aspect of stripping the vocals out is nothing to do with the actual vocals, it's more to do with the lyrics. Because I find that when you listen to music, the lyrics will obviously tug your consciousness towards whatever that song is about. And to me, it's the same as like reading a book versus watching a movie. You read the book and your mind can create a lot of the scenery, and there can be a lot of beauty in that, whereas a movie can either make that even better or, in my opinion, more often than not, actually ruin it. So with music, it's the same. Like, I feel let's take the lyrical context away from the music and just appreciate the compositions for what they are. Because I think some of those songs might be boring as instrumentals, but we'll leave that to people to decide.
I don't really think so. I
don't think so either.
Like, I must be honest that the album is one of the easiest, and I mean that from a metalhead's point of view, one of the most easily digestible releases I've heard in a long time. The whole album just goes over you like a wave. It's like it flows like butter. I dig it, and the more melodic, like tracks like the title track, Cult of Conflict. I mean, man, that I can't wait to hear that more, like, just hearing the orchestral bits in the final few loops. Oh, it'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
But I guess with that in mind, it also gives the album a little bit more longevity in the long term, because let's be honest, you put a lot of time, a lot of love into this release, and you don't want it to be one of those, oh, it's in today, out tomorrow type scenario.
Yeah.
So with that all in mind, obviously now as the world kind of unfucks itself, so to speak, what's the future it'll hold with you as in terms of Mind Assault? Obviously you mentioned maybe doing some more videos, but in terms of the creative process, any idea, any possibility of some future singles, maybe even a small EP following this trend, this new sound that you've kind of introduced to the world?
Timing. I can't give answers to any of that at the moment because we're not in a strong position right now. Like financially, half the band has lost their jobs. So it's survival mode. We've had to give up our rehearsal space because it was just costing money. Haven't been able to use it for a lot of things because of lockdown, and not all of us live in Somerset West anymore either. So it's become more complicated being a creative powerhouse. So I think for us, a big part of this whole season of COVID has been a very introspective time where we need to get our lives back on track before we can get our band back on track, if that makes sense. But where we are still strong is our ability to perform what's on that album. And I believe that as soon as we can gig again, we're going to get that flippin' train out of the station like pronto, because like we're so amped to play it. I mean, we've been playing some of those songs for a really long time, but we also held back. There's certain songs on there that we deliberately didn't want to play live because we wanted to keep something in reserve for the release, and that was our plan for 2020. And I mean, we've gone big with our performance aspects as well. Like, we don't want to do gigs now without our own lighting rig, for example. And like we've created dramatic, like visuals and like we're really excited to actually get on stage and show people what we've done. You know, people have seen this kind of activity from us before, because like I said, we've always been focused on a compelling live performance. And now we feel that we've got this album that we're super proud of. We've got this show that we're super proud of. We're all dressed up and know where to go, you know? So yeah, like I think once we can get the gigs going again, I think then we'll find by that time people have found their feet in income and stuff. We can have a creative space again, because we can't do this without a creative space. You know, like a band without a band room, the way we think of it is like a king without a castle. I know a lot of people write via the internet and, you know, do all this back and forth, but I don't know if that works for us here. Like, we're too old school. We're trying to adapt, but it's not happening naturally.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
Like, pushing creativity now to another level is like, okay, guys, like, you can do lighting, you can work on sound and audio, but come on, like, pushing that. But I'm sure you guys all have a lot of creative ideas still.
Oh yeah. No,
sure,
there's piles of ideas. Piles of ideas. But to bring those to the life that we're going to need to bring them to, we need to be together as a team. It needs to happen.
A band, if you will.
Yeah, would you imagine that?
Like, can you believe? But yeah, I'm excited that you guys are excited because, I mean, the key thing is actually the live performances. A lot of bands haven't gotten that opportunity and have released albums that now are 1 year old in the mix and, you know, really working on new albums. So yeah, I like what you guys are conceptualizing at least. But yeah, we will see what the future holds post-COVID, because
indeed we will.
We're getting there, but we're not there yet.
But the one thing we are confident of is, although it's not a happy story right now, we feel pretty confident that we're not going away. You know, in spite of whatever hardships certain members are facing, it's like, like, we ain't done. So expect to see and hear things from us. It's just, you know, in terms of timeline and stuff, it's like, well, it feels pointless to speculate.
Yeah. Patrick, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us. We're just about almost out of time, and it has been really great hearing about this process that's been, you know, ongoing for so long, and it's been so great to like celebrate this release with you. Thank you so much,
man. And what a well-deserved treat to the ears it's been, really. If you guys haven't heard it, and damn you if you haven't, go do it right now. We'll include links in the description, but it's available across all the platforms: Spotify, Amazon, iTunes. Go support the band directly. Grab it from their Bandcamp. High quality waves, so you can really appreciate those masters. And yeah, I guess that's it for another week, Alec.
Indeed it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Patrick, thanks for joining us. Guys, we'll be back same time, same place on the interweb. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe down below. Yeah, we'll see you guys same time, same place. Keep well. Laters.